Hawks Nation, what is going on? Welcome to another edition of the HawksFanTV Podcast. Hope you guys have been staying happy and healthy out there. I'm so excited for this week because, as you can see, I am finally no longer by myself, and I finally have found my permanent co-host. His name is Mr. Derek Freeze. I know it looks like Derek Fries, but it's pronounced Derek Freeze, like Mr. Freeze over there. Derek is a great buddy of mine. We've been great friends for years now. We met in Athens, Georgia years ago, but actually what strengthened our friendship in the last few years here was our Hawks fanhood. I actually convinced him to get season tickets to the Hawks, and then I moved down to Florida, so that tells you what kind of friend I am. But yeah, no, this guy's a huge Hawks fan. He bleeds Hawks basketball. He is in the six-man section every single game. If you watch the games on Valley Sports, you have undoubtedly seen this man at this point because I have countless recordings of him. I'm honestly super honored to have him on because not only is he a good friend of mine, but I do think he's somebody that is going to have some pretty good takes that I feel like a lot of us fans have, because that's kind of our whole spiel here thing at HawksFanTV is that we are not necessarily experts. We are fans, and we're making fan content. So I will go ahead and let Derek introduce himself a little bit for the things I didn't say about him. Man, I'll go and give you the mic and do your little quick intro.
Well, first of all, thanks, Mac. It's a dream come true. I get to talk sports with one of my good friends here, one of my best friends. My name's Derek Freeze, spelled like fries. Originally from Savannah, grew up outside of Statesboro, middle of nowhere. Went to Georgia Southern, hail Southern, the real GSU, Mac, the real GSU. Y'all have Six Flags over Atlanta here, your little amusement park. We have Six Flags over Statesboro. But, Mac is right. We met in Athens. I started going to Hawks games because I live here in Decatur. And every time I went, I ran into this man. And he convinced me to get season tickets. He did move away, but he did get me in with the six-man people. And yes, you will definitely see me down there in that lower section going crazy every game. And I'm looking forward to being able to join you here as your permanent co-host to fire off these takes.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm so happy to have you. Before we get into this week's episode, which I'm sure you guys can probably go ahead and guess what this week's episode is going to be about, I do want to apologize for an audio issue. I found out embarrassingly late that the audio for last week's episode, Derek's laughing at me, was not posted to the Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music platforms. It was posted successfully to YouTube. That is a hard lesson you learn in this whole podcast production business. I'm a one-man show when it comes to that, so I do apologize, and I can guarantee it will never happen again. Now that I got that off my chest, we'll go ahead and get in this week's episode. As I mentioned, we'll go ahead and start with the draft recap. I'm honestly pretty excited about this draft. I think it was a pretty darn good one. I think it's going to be a sneaky good one. We're going to recap each player, and we're just going to go in ascending order. So we'll start with Kobe, and we'll end with Seth. So I'll go ahead and start with Kobe Buffkin. Obviously, at this point, everybody knows we got Kobe Buffkin 15th overall out of Michigan. He's going to be wearing number 4 for the Hawks. He is 6'4", 187 pounds, soaking wet. So he's definitely got to put on some pounds. But, with his age being 19 and a half, a little bit over 19 and a half years, I'm okay with that. He's going to grow a little bit. He averaged 14 points per game last season for Michigan, almost 36% from three, almost 5 rebounds a game, and almost 50% from the field. So honestly, pretty efficient shooting when he was making it. And 14 points per game in a Power 5 conference like the Big Ten, I mean, that's pretty darn impressive. This is a guy that can thrive with or without the ball. So I'll be honest, I don't know how often he'll be on the floor with Trae Young, but, when we have players like Trae Young who are truly best when they do have the ball in their hand, it's nice to have players that can thrive without the ball in their hands and can, run around screens and whatnot. He ran the pick and roll in college a lot, so it's something that he's very familiar with. And, Quinn is a pick and roll guru. He's somebody that, is famous for the pick and roll and is certainly going to be running it a lot in Atlanta, which I'm honestly excited for that. I think the pick and roll is a pretty exciting play in basketball, especially for the players that we're going to have on our team. He dramatically improved from his freshman year to his sophomore year with his, shooting percentage, his points per game, and really just everything. Even his defense, I don't think he'll be the greatest defender at first. But I do think he'll have plenty of fire and length. He mentioned that he improved his defense at Michigan by watching film and focused on moving his feet. Which sounds pretty simple, but when you're in the moment, you can be surprised these lack of thought you can kind of have. You know what I mean? So he's really is just a very mature player. He's got a very high IQ. He probably shows shades of D'Angelo Russell and Tyrese Maxey. I'm laughing as I say that because very mature player and D'Angelo Russell probably shouldn't go in the same sentence, but it is what it is. He's got family that lives in Atlanta. He's got a couple aunts and uncles down here. Mentioned that he's already dreading the traffic, not looking forward to it. And all I got to say on that one is join the club, buddy. He also mentioned that we got flying roaches down here. I know flying roaches is what we called the Falcons the last few years, but I mean, I don't know. It was this nationwide thing that everybody knew. But I got to say, man, welcome to the Dirty South, Kobe. I think you're going to fit in just fine here. It's one of those guys that I think has the potential to be the second unit floor general. I really do. I don't know who's going to be our backup point guard at this point besides him. So I do think he's going to be the second unit floor general. He mentioned that he's already building a great relationship with Quinn. So I'm excited about him, man. He's going to be a good player. He's going to be a good player for us. One last thing before I hand the mic over to you, I just want to have a couple comments on some of his best games while he's at Michigan and the presser that we had the other day for all the rookies. Some of his best games at Michigan, he dropped 28 and 8 rebounds against Wisconsin, 23, 8 rebounds, 5 assists against Toledo in the NIT, 15, 12 and 8 against Northwestern, and then 23 and 6 against Illinois. And just, those are some monster numbers against really good programs. So those games are just getting me excited about what he could honestly do for the Hawks. And watching the presser, man, these are the things that I took away from it. One, the dude's got a great sense of humor, which I got to admit is something that I love in my athletes. I don't mind them taking their job serious, and in the moment, in the final play of the game, taking it serious. Of course, I want them to, but at the same time, man, like they have, like, I think of somebody like George Kittle from the NFL. Why do we all love George Kittle? Why did we all love Gronk? Because they're fun-loving dudes, man. They don't take themselves too serious. You know what I mean? So Kobe seems like one of those guys, and I love that about him. He's a clear film junkie. Like I said, he watched a ton of film at Michigan. Even mentioned that he's already been watching film on players in the NBA and his teammates on the Hawks. He wants to win championships for Atlanta, which isn't the most rare thing ever. That's what every athlete wants to do. But it's at least good to hear him say that. He's saying that Atlanta's shown him a ton of love already. He already said we. He said we a few times in the presser, and I was like, hell yes, man. I was like, you are already on this team, man. You are a freaking Atlanta Hawk. You better be saying we. So I love to hear that, man. He's got a huge family influence. His mom is a huge influence to him. I'm someone who my mom is a huge influence to me, so I know where that's coming from. And I'm excited for him, man. Floor comparison for me for players currently in the NBA right now is going to be a guy like Kobe White. No pun intended that they got the same name. Kobe White, real quick, I do think he's somebody that maybe doesn't have this much production as he could somewhere where there aren't two borderline elite guards in front of him, but hasn't really panned out the way that I think most people thought he would in the NBA. And his ceiling comparison is a guy who isn't active anymore. But for our younger listeners, if you have never watched Michael Redd, I'm telling you, man, go look at Michael Redd. He wasn't a powerful guy, but man, he had a stroke. And Michael Redd was a guy that at one point was an all-star and an all-NBA player. So obviously, if Kobe Buffkin becomes a all-star or all-NBA player, I mean, we got a hell of a pick out of that. So I'm excited for the Kobe Buffkin pick, man. I think it's got a ton of upside, and it's somebody who, at the end of the day, I think is going to bring a lot to the table for the Hawks on and off the court. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts, man. What you think about it?
Well, first and foremost, I love how y'all Jacksonville Jaguars fans have one good season, and y'all act like y'all haven't been the exact same thing as the Falcons for most of your existence.
Hey, this is the Hawks podcast. Quit bringing it up.
But no, I love the pick. I mean, we got him at 15. He's a high energy guy, high basketball IQ. Yes, he only weighs 185, so save these 2 awards with me. Weight room. Get in it, get your diet right. You need to get over 200 pounds as fast as possible, but not the Zion Williamson way, but muscle. But what I do like is he also got a 6'7" wingspan. He came to Michigan at 17 years old, and his freshman year, he fought for playing time. He didn't come right in and light the world on fire. And then he did make that huge jump from his freshman to sophomore year. And what I really love about that is, let's face it, he's coming to the Hawks. Trae Young, Murray. He ain't starting. So he's going to have to sit on the bench. He's going to have to learn. I love the fact that he can move off the ball really well. He's constantly moving, constantly cutting, knows how to, get found while cutting, well balanced. He's got a strong first step, with a high release on the shot. He is an elite finisher at the rim. I mean, go watch his tape. I mean, he throws up some ridiculous stuff, and it happens to find its way in. Great touch there. Even against larger defenders, he's, like you said, shot 36% from three. Working with Quinn and Kyle Korver, let's see if we can get those numbers up. Of course, 85% free throw shooter. Defensively, on ball defense. Oh my God, that's what the Hawks been missing. If you remember watching this last series with Boston, tell me how many times you saw someone just sprint by our defenders. I mean, he's definitely, a scrawnier guy. He's more of a perimeter pest with the long arms. He's good at swatting at the ball without drawing fouls. Definitely he's going to have some weight, though. Otherwise, he can get back down in the NBA. But he does still get around screens pretty decently well. What's also great about him, too, is we have to look at the future. Murray might not re-sign with us next year.
Right.
So he has to be a good guy that I think could step up. I mean, definitely growing in Quinn's system and getting with Kyle Korver, I think this is going to be just a great fit for the Hawks. I love the pick.
Oh yeah, man. I love the pick too. It's I will say in most mock drafts he wasn't available at 15. So for us to get him, I truly think it's gonna end up being a little bit of a steal. But I think all these guys are gonna be in steal. So speaking of all these guys, we'll move on to the next one. We ended up getting this guy 39th overall. We didn't draft him ourselves. We ended up getting him via trade, but that is Mr. Mouhamed Gay. He is 6'11", 213 pounds, so he's super lanky. He's out of Washington State University. Go Cougs. I know, Derek, you're a little Washington State fan. He's just over 20 and a half years old, so he's still really young too. This is a guy that had 14.3 points per game and eight and a half rebounds a game in college. So he truly is a great rebounder. He's an athletic defender who can actually afford to be switched to a guard, which, I mean, for someone with his length and his frame, that's huge, man. There's not many guys his size that can actually do that and do it at a high rate, at least. It's he should help space the floor when he's out there, when he gets out there. I know he may not get out there too much this year, but he should help space the floor. He made a decently high percentage of his threes last year. Nothing to write home about necessarily, but it's definitely something that could be improved, and he at least has in his tool belt as a player. It's yet another lob threat for Trae and really anybody running the pick and roll in this Hawks offense. Because as I mentioned, pick and roll, Quinn Snyder, pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, man. Might as well change the name of this podcast to Pick and Roll, because that's what we are going to be doing in Atlanta. And I'm excited about it, man. He's a pretty solid passer himself, too. He's really active on the glass, especially the offensive boards. I would say he's a borderline elite offensive rebounder. He's loved a good putback dunk, which, putback dunks, man, they got to be probably a top 5 most exciting play in all of basketball. You and I have been there at State Farm Arena when a putback dunk has happened, whether it's Bogey doing it or John Collins. It's insane, man. It gets some people going for sure. So to have that, again, in his arsenal of weapons, it's nice to see. He's honestly can surprisingly occasionally make his own shot too. For a guy his size, I think that's awesome. I will say it's not all good with Mouhamed. There's a reason that he was, slipped to 39. His shot mechanics and game IQ can certainly use some improvement, and that's honestly probably me putting it as nice as I can. He's a very raw prospect. It's something that, he's just raw. I honestly don't need to go into much detail about that because we've all watched sports enough. We all understand what a raw prospect is. That's exactly what this guy is. He's almost a definition of it. But I'll say this, man. He definitely has the potential to be the backup four now that John is gone. I don't know how much playing time he will get. He could end up getting a lot more playing time if a potential scenario happens. I get to that a little later. But he could end up getting some significant playing time this year. But I could also see him being sent down to College Park with the Skyhawks because he's just such a raw prospect. And, I would imagine he would tear it up. Some of those stat lines that those guys down in College Park put up are ridiculous. So I could see him being one of those guys. Again, just like Kobe, some of his best games in college, he had absolutely monster numbers. These numbers that I'm about to say, man, I honestly, when I was looking them up, I had to go back and watch highlights of each game to make sure. I was like, oh, did this actually happen? But dude put up 31-12 against USC, 24-14 against Arizona, 18-18 against UCLA, 17-15 against Washington, and 22-12 against Utah State. I mean, and that's not all of them. Those are just the ones that I honestly could fit on my notes. Like the dude very often would score 20 plus points and 10 plus rebounds. So he truly can be an absolute monster in the stat sheet if he is in the right scenario and is given the right guidance with how raw of a prospect he is. Because as I was saying, watching the presser, I can't say I was most impressed with him, but I think I ended up liking him the most because he was just super wholesome, man. You could tell he was a little shy. He's from Senegal, and he's just a huge family guy. He one of the comments that he had about Atlanta was that he loved how happy everyone seemed. Come on, man, that's just freaking adorable. That's I'm excited about him, and I think the thing that honestly stood out to me most about what he said about with a couple of his answers in the presser was that he understands that he's a super raw prospect. So that self-awareness and a professional athlete is amazing. So for him to understand that he has a lot of room for improvement, but if he makes said improvement, dude could, truly end up being a great player. I don't know about perennial all-star. I know that's a bit of a stretch. I'm not going to, put that kind of hype onto the kid just yet, but a very serviceable professional basketball player, you're damn right. So I really like the pick, man. I said before going to the draft recap, I liked all three of them. So, I'm following suit, man. I truly did like this guy a lot. So I think it could be a sneaky good pick for us.
Let's face it. This is the second round we're talking about here. In the second round, you're going for a guy that's oozing with raw talent that you can sit there and maybe mold. A guy that's 6'10", because what's the old adage? You can't coach height. Can't make a dude that's 6'5", 6'10" overnight.
No, we've tried.
But also you either go that way, you could find a guy with a defined role. With this guy, yes, he's 6'10". He's only been playing basketball for 4 years. He played soccer beforehand. There are some other guys that have done very well in basketball that came from that background. One guy's on our team, and Clint Capella, which I hope that Gay goes and immediately just attaches himself at the hip to Clint and learn as much about defense as he can, because that's obviously his weakest point. On offense, he's very much a finesse guy. Yeah, he can get a rebound. Yeah, he's 6'10". He's actually got a pretty decent shooting touch on the ball. He doesn't mind facing up. He's got some, you watch his highlights. Like a lot of times you watch highlights, you start seeing the guys that go to the go-to move. You see a bunch of a go-to move. With him, it's really, you're seeing kind of everything. He doesn't really have a go-to move. It's definitely, he's figuring things out. He's definitely raw. Like I said, defensively is where he has the longest way to go. He needs to definitely add more size. But guys at that height, usually it takes them a couple more years in order to add size to that big, tall, lanky frame. But he's someone that I definitely see we stash away in the G League and develop him out because, hey, Clint's not going to be here forever. Love Onyeka, but we're definitely going to need someone behind him. So why not take a flyer? We gave up a 2027 second round pick. I like it. For what we gave up for it and also where we're getting him at, he has the ability to learn. He's not going to get thrown to the wolves. I like the pick. Yeah. But it kind of goes into our next one. This was a raw talent guy that, with a lot of upside. And this, what I said earlier at the beginning of this, when you go into the second round, you either look for this or you look and see what we got with the next guys. You got a guy with the defined role. He knows what he's in the NBA for, and he's going to stick to it. So I'll let you start it off there, Mac.
Oh yeah, no man. So you are referring to none other than Mr. Seth Lundy, the guard out of Penn State. We took him 46 overall. He's 6'6", 219 pounds. So he's got great size. He is over 23 years old. So he's already a pretty old player. I'm not going to sit here and act like at my age that I think 23 is old. But a rookie in the NBA being 23 is, I feel like, pretty rare these days. But he still had almost 14 and a half points per game at Penn State last year. Had shot 40% from 3-point. Had under one assist a game. So to be completely honest, he's probably a little one-dimensional, but I don't think we need him to do much other than that. He's a pretty flexible scorer. I want to say he probably will end up being a catch and shoot threat. He's just one of those dudes that has a quick release and doesn't really need much space to get it off. You know what I mean? He's going to space the floor by staying mobile on offense and racing off those screens, which again, I got to be honest, I feel like our offense would get very stagnant at times, and it would just turn into hero ball and people just stand around, whether that was coaching from Nate or just lack of fire in side of them because they just were over it. I don't know. That's something I don't know if we ever really will know as fans. But he can stay in the corner and attack those closeouts from opposing teams. He can stay in constant motion to throw off opposing defenses, which is something that when I think of that, I'm not comparing Seth Lundy to the guy I'm about to say, but he's the king of it in my mind, but that's Steph Curry. He just runs around and runs and runs and runs and runs, and then boom, hits that three wide open. So if he could do even a fraction of that for us, oh my gosh, this could end up being a pretty good player for us. He can run dribble handoffs too, so he's a more versatile player than maybe his stat sheet will say, but he's a good player. He's definitely the 3-and-D prototype player. He's going to be best off the one dribble, but he's definitely shown success in the pick and roll, and even in ISO at times, and in the pick and roll. Hello Quinn. It's what you want to hear as a Hawks fan at this point. His 3-point shooting has improved over time each season, showing his ability to grow as a shooter. I want to go ahead and say that's probably what you were getting at when you say this guy understands his role as an NBA player. He knows, hey man, they are bringing me in here to do 3-point shooting, and if that's how I'm going to make this squad and make a second contract in the NBA, a second contract that at this point with the CBA, bro, you could get generational wealth. It's getting that second contract is a big deal in the NBA. So, I'm sure the guy understands very much. If I can be this, stand up, post up shooter, this corner shooter, this lethal shooter, like a Duncan Robinson, I can get a ton of money. So, I don't know if he will see too much playing time, barring more roster moves or, God forbid, injuries. I do think we're now with Bufkin a little deep at the guard position. I think he's got 4 guys on our roster that I don't even think you could just say arguably are better than him. They are better than him. Bufkin got drafted at 15th for a reason. He's definitely a better player than Seth Lundy at this point in his career. And I might not ever talk to you ever again if you tell me that Seth Lundy is better than Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, and Bogey. I don't know if I can take you serious. I hope he's better than them one day. That would end up being a complete and total steal. But yes, right now I would not compare him to those guys. But like I said, if he ends up not seeing much playing time, I think he'll probably be shipped down to the G League as well. But again, a guy that I think would absolutely tear up the G League and probably have monster numbers where you're like, Seth Lundy dropped 45 points in the G League tonight. Because, his best games at Penn State, I don't think they were the numbers weren't as crazy as they were for Kobe and especially Mouhamed. But he still dropped 25 points and 6 rebounds versus Indiana, 24 points and 7 rebounds versus Nebraska, 23 points and 12 rebounds versus Clemson. 17 and 10 against Illinois. He still definitely had some great games. His draft reaction, I don't know if you did end up seeing it when he got drafted. He was stone cold. He had no reaction. Some people didn't really like it, and I liked it. It's a dude. I think he was honestly. This is a dude who was a second-round draft pick. We got to be real to a degree. I'm sure in some part of his brain, he did have some level of doubt if he was even going to be drafted, okay? So when it happened, I don't mind him being speechless and kind of soaking in that moment and being like, all right, man, it's time to get to effing work. You know what I mean? So I don't see anything wrong with it, because in the presser, he said it was the best day of his life. He's smiling as he says it. The dude, honestly, when I watch his presser, I'm not going to compare him to this guy on the court, but his demeanor, 100%, I get strong Kawhi Leonard vibes from him. Like, he's just got one of those cold demeanors. I'm sure he can be funny off camera and, not in front of the media and all that stuff. But man, he just seems very, very serious and in a good way. Like, I don't mind it. I know I said earlier with Kobe, I like to see guys have senses of humor, but not every guy has to be the same. If we have one guy in our locker room that's a little more serious, that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. I thought it was awesome. He's a family guy as well. All three guys just could not stop oozing about their families, and you just love to hear that. They got great structure systems coming into the NBA, so I'm really excited about that for them. He said they went to the Dream game their first day in Atlanta. He said Atlanta was a party, and I love that description of Atlanta. Anybody who's ever lived in Atlanta or been to Atlanta knows that we definitely like to have a good time in Atlanta. So describing us as a party is definitely an accurate thing to say. He mentioned in his presser they asked him something about had they know anything about their new teammates yet, and his answer was, I do know one thing. I better not piss off Trae Young. I know that dude goes off when he's pissed off, so he knows about Ice Trae, man, and that was just awesome to hear. I can't lie. And the coolest thing that he said in the entire presser, and this is where I was like, again, this kind of falls suit with the Kawhi demeanor, is that he reached out to the Hawks to get in the gym right away. Like, they basically were like, yeah, we weren't expecting you to already want in, but go ahead, man. So, this is a guy that's definitely going to be willing to put in the work. He values relationships. It's something that he mentioned with Quinn, so I'm excited about that. Shooting is going to be an emphasis in the new Hawks offense, so that's why I think we got a guy like Seth Lundy. That's why I think, we got a guy like Mouhamed Gay, who could end up being, honestly, a pretty good three-point shooter from the 4 spot. And, a guy we could end up trading for, I think, is a pretty good three-point shooter from the 4 spot as well. I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, man, Seth is somebody that I'm damn excited about too.
No, you hit the nail on the head. One, he's a hard worker. That's one thing that you keep hearing about him constantly. I was reading an article about him getting drafted from the Philadelphia Inquirer, where it's Christmas Day. His family's getting ready to have breakfast. He's got his bag and he's walking out the door. I'm like, hey, what you doing? I got to go get my 1,000 shots in. So to hear the story that he only wants access to the Hawks gym, I love it. Because like I said, this guy knew what his path to the NBA was. This guy didn't start to his junior year of college. He played a lot of sophomore year, made the jump to starter his junior year, and then his senior year got really more efficient. This dude has put in hard work. He can stroke it from 3. He can hit a 3 with a hand in his face. A la this man right here, Bogey. He's not the most elite athlete in the world. He can struggle with guys with, guarding quicker guys. But he's going to be a 3-and-D player. His stroke is impressive. He did shoot 40% from 3 at 6.4 average shots over the course of his senior year per game. He is 6'6", so he can play the guard or the wing spot. And he has good size on his body. He doesn't need the weight room, so that's all good there. And like you said, the guy seems to. He values relationships. He seemed to already love what he's heard from Quinn. I'm excited. It's most likely going to be a Skyhawks guy, but hey, I love his work ethic. And with that, always, that's that intangible. That's that X factor, man, that, we've seen it time and time again. A guy didn't get much love, but hey, he knew his role, did it well, and outworked everyone. And it led to that second contract, led to a big payday. But like I said, I think we did a good job overall. I'm very excited about all 3. Obviously, Kobe's most likely we're going to see a lot more of than this other guys, but I do love the picks and where we got them at. Oh
yeah. So yeah, we'll go ahead and finish the draft recap on that. We'll get you guys out on this week's episode on this one. and that's going to be the John Collins trade recap. I'm wearing his shirt for a reason. I love the guy. Hate to see him go. I even when the production dipped, I was holding on to that hope that he was still going to be a key piece to our championship winning team one day, hopefully. But it had to happen for salary purposes. Because now we have a $25.3 million trade exception, which is the largest in the NBA. And for those of you that may not fully understand exactly what a trade exception is, it's basically like a line of credit. I mean, not a line of credit, sorry, a credit voucher, meaning, we can trade for a player or players, it doesn't have to be just one, within a $25.3 million contract value and for this season and, really improve the team. It's something that can expire, so it's more than likely that we do it this season. It could be potentially just another move for us to re-sign DeJounte, Onyeka, and Saddiq Bey, which, don't get me wrong, it's not like I wouldn't want to see all three of those guys come back, but I got to admit, I would hope we're still planning on making another move, which I do think we will. I want everybody to remember that this is something the Celtics did just a few years ago with Gordon Hayward's contract, and now they're one of the best teams in the league. So if you do the trade exception with that large of an exception and you do it correct, you can end up getting back a lot in return. And what I think this could mean is, I think it could mean that we end up trading for Pascal Siakam from Toronto. I know that was a trade that recently kind of fell through, and I think it fell through because I'm just going to be real. I don't think Tony Ressler was willing to pay, that much into the luxury tax and have all of those big contracts on the team right now. But I did it with two different trade machines. I'm sorry if I didn't find a third reputable trade machine source out there for you guys, but I did it with two separate ones. And if we traded Clint and DeAndre straight up for Pascal, it would basically be, the contracts would basically equal out. Now, I'm sure in trades like that, it's hardly ever just 2 for 1. I'm sure there'd be a couple bench players, prospects, if you will, that may be included. But that would have our starting five at Trey at the 1, DeJounte at the 2, Jalen at the 3, Pascal at the 4, and Onyeka at the 5. I think that's a pretty damn good team in my mind, especially if Jalen and Onyeka keep making those strides forward. Like I think most of us think they will. That leaves the second unit too, with Kobe at the 1, Bogey at the 2, AJ at the 3, Saddiq at the 4, and Mouhamed Gay at the 5. And Seth Lundy is kind of just a rotational guard here and there, something that maybe we saw with Aaron Holiday last year. But it's something that had to happen. And honestly, man, I'm excited about what it could end up meaning for the Hawks, to be completely honest.
No, I mean, I agree with you. It sucks. I mean, John Collins is one of my favorite Hawks. I mean, we have in our intro him posterizing Embiid that first game against Milwaukee when Trey throws it off the backboard, he slams that thing down. We go on to win that game. If Trey doesn't step on that ref's foot, I mean, I know woulda, coulda, shoulda, whatever, but I love the guy, team player. Like, the guy came out of college, he was like a defensive liability, couldn't shoot the 3. He worked his tail off, but it had to be him. And the reason why is because people look at his declining numbers and they want to point to the injury from last year. And that finger injury was gruesome. And the leg as well. But it actually, if you go look, his numbers started declining once Clint Capella got here, because they both operate in the same areas of the floor. John is a guy that wants to do the pick and roll. He is a elite finisher at the rim. He's the throwback to an old school wing. He doesn't really handle the ball too well, not the best passer. But when Clint got there, Clint unfortunately can't get more than 3 feet away from the rim. And even then, hey, the guy misses some bunnies from time to time. So it's eating up his role there. Quinn comes in. And in Quinn's system, he wants wings that could hit threes. Not saying that John couldn't. He was never a volume guy, though. And, the finger injury last year, yes, he was shooting like 29. Now, after the All-Star break, the numbers did start going back up, but he was standing in the corner. We can get someone for less than $25 million a year to do that. So it had to be John Collins. I hope him all the best. It does, open up some, real good opportunities, like you said, with the trade and stuff. I will love the trade scenario you just threw out there, because I love Siakam. But even if not, I mean, what you're going to see is, I do think we need one more year of CC if we are going to keep him, because Onyeka, as much as he's come, a long ways, he still gets into foul trouble a lot. we saw that Quinn was working with him last year once he came in on that, coaching him up a little bit. So I'm kind of happy. I mean, John, I'm glad you got to ring your gong one last time and pack it up and take it out, and you can be John the Baptist of the Joseph Smith variety. But, you know, but like I said, you know, it does open up some more opportunities for Jalen Johnson and AJ Griffin. These are two guys in the last two drafts that, you know, I think we've gotten lucky in the draft the last 3 years where what we got. I mean, I love Kobe and also AJ Griffin and Jalen Johnson. Now it's time to see what they really have. It's time for them to step up. I'm really excited to see what Quinn has done with them in the offseason, but now's your chance to go make their money. I hope you're right. I hope we won't just use this trade exception to, you know, just re-sign those guys. Because let's face it, you know, Rudy Gay is not going to play with us. I don't think. I mean, if he is, it's just for bedroom room, locker room presence. But I think he's getting bought out of his contract. So I hope this is not the last. I mean, I hate to say it, but when you hear that there was a mandate to stay on the luxury tax, to me, it's like you say you're ready to win now, but also it's like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. I'm not saying you can't win and stay under the luxury tax, but when you have a player that's on a super max contract making $40 million a year and you're scared to go over the luxury tax, how committed to winning are you really? So let's see what we do with this trade exception. It's time to put up or shut up. Are you really committed to winning? Or you're trying to stay under that luxury tax? Because let me tell you something. If we don't win this year, then we're going to have to start having, like, is Murray going to want to stay? Is Trey going to want to stay? You know, last week you talked about, like, the LA stuff. I don't read too much into that because winning cures all. But come on, guys. Like, I just feel that, you know, you can't sit there and say you want to win and also be cheap.
Yeah, no, man, you're right. You're right. And I will definitely agree with you on that. I'm hoping you end up having to bite your tongue on that, and they do make some moves. But you know, that it is what it is. We'll be talking about that all summer because we'll have plenty of episodes about free agency and what the Hawks are going to be doing. So definitely be on the lookout for those guys. As I said, we'll get you out of there on that. As always, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for the support. Check out our website at HawksFanTV.com. That's where you'll find our articles and other cool content as well. Follow us if you aren't already on Twitter and Instagram at HawksFanTV. And be on the lookout for more podcasts. I promise the audio will be on there. And yeah, you know, Derek, I'm so excited to have you on, man. This is going to be really fun. We'll definitely try and do some things in the season where maybe, you know, we have like a meetup at one of the Hawks games, you know, something like that. It'd be real cool. So we'll get you out here on that. And as always, go Hawks, everybody, and good night.
Go Hawks. Good night, y'all.